Perfect. Show us live. Okay, we'll get started here momentarily. I'm almost done sharing this out. Okay, perfect. I'm going to go ahead and get started. I see a few folks that are starting to hop on and off of the broadcast. So I want to get us kicked off and going. And as you guys start to join us, you can always engage with us. Good morning and happy Wednesday. It has felt like every week is just so much longer and drinking through a fire hose. And Elizabeth, you were agreeing with me. It is crazy for everyone. So I'm so excited to continue to carve out this time for our live broadcasts on Mondays, Wednesdays, and Fridays. I am Juliet Abdel, President and CEO of the Westminster Chamber of Commerce. And if this is your very first time landing on our page, do not let it be the last. Make sure you hit the like button and you hit the follow, and make sure that it's set to a default where you're notified once we go live. It helps me avoid that awkward pause at the start, and it helps you to just drop what you're doing and engage with us immediately. So of course, if you're coming back to us on these broadcasts, we've enjoyed your presence since last March until now. So over a year and a half nearly that we've been hosting these broadcasts. You can continue to also hit the share button on the video so others in your network can see who we have on our broadcast, can learn some of the information, and can also engage with us along the way. And of course, I ask that either newbies or recurring viewers that you engage with us along the way. There is a comment section here on the video that you can find, whether you're watching it on your phone or on your computer. And this is where we will pick up any good morning remarks, pleasantries, comments you might give, congratulatory notes for a guest, or even questions as to some of the things that come up. So make sure that you stay highly engaged with us, because I'm so excited to have Elizabeth on here with me.
Hi, I'm excited to be here. Thank you.
And I know we've got a ton of information we're going to be sharing. So one last housekeeping item. You can find us on all social media pages, on YouTube channel, Westminster Chamber of Commerce, on LinkedIn, Westminster Chamber of Commerce, of course, on Instagram and Twitter at Westy Chamber. So all platforms, no excuses that you're not engaged with us. Tag us, comment, like. We will reciprocate and share the love on all things social. With that, before I turn over, I actually see a lot of people already on here, Elizabeth. So I want to pull up Mayor Pro Tem DeMott, who's sharing a nice good morning message our way. Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem DeMott. We enjoy having you on here. Of course, we also have one of our ambassadors, Ambassador Chair and member with our organization, Emilio, giving us a nice good morning or a nice hello. And thank you, Emilio, for hopping onto the actual page to do it. Sometimes you do it on my personal, and then I feel so bad when I can't pull up a comment. I feel like people think I'm just like shunning them. So you commented in the right place. Thanks for being on here with us. Past chairman, of course, Brian Dice, giving us a nice good morning. So we've got a few folks that are on here with us. And of course, Wednesdays we reserve as a network welcome, or really an opportunity to welcome some businesses that have recently affiliated or connected with our organization over this last year. We want people to get to know you, Elizabeth. And it has been so hard to do that in the COVID era that we're in. In a typical year, we have over 200 programs and events. So you can imagine imagine this feels like a desert because I'm not able to get you in front of folks. So what we want them to see is who you are, what you're all about, and then learn about what you do professionally. So my personal interest and why I love what I do is that I get a chance to visit with people like you, and I want others to know a little bit more. Do you come from Colorado? Are you a transplant here? What is Elizabeth? Where did you originate from?
So that's a great question. I actually had that down as one of the things I was going to talk about because I am a Colorado native, and that is, don't see a lot of those anymore.
Yeah.
I actually was born in Colorado Springs, but I grew up here in Westminster. So North Denver is near and dear to my heart because I grew up here.
That is so cool. Okay, so you are a Colorado native, a very rare breed. We have a few of you guys within the organization. And so what I always like to do is as soon as I find you, I seek you up. So at the next event, know that I will do that for you.
Yes.
But you actually grew up a good part of your life up here, up north. So yeah. Did you go to either Westy High? Were you in the Adams 12 or Jeffco district?
I went to Stanley Lake. So I was in Jeffco, and most of my school career was in Jeffco.
Yeah. So you went to high school here, you grew up here, then you pursued higher education, or did you immediately enter the workforce and say, I'm going to go ahead and do this?
So I did a couple of years of technical school and kind of bounced around until I figured out where I belonged, what I wanted to be when I grew up. So eventually landed in mortgages about 15 years ago. But my mom's in mortgages, so I grew up in the mortgage business. Okay. And she actually told me, never ever get in this crazy field. I followed her advice, right? Didn't I?
Like I did that. I mean, I went fully in regardless.
Right.
That is so cool. Mayor Pro Tem DeMont is sharing a nice Go Gators. I know he has some kids of his own that are currently at that high school or have been through it. And so, yes, there's some love that's already on here for you. But so despite what your mom's advice was, you still pursued this. And I always love this because most of us women that are in the role that we're in, we've had some pretty strong personalities and pretty independent women that have paved the way for us. Yeah. And I attribute mine to my mom. And so as you're sharing, I've seen her do this growing up. I'm like, you had someone that was in there in the trenches. You saw kind of the ups and downs behind it. Yeah. And I think it's made you so much stronger because of it.
Definitely. Yeah. I attribute most of everything to my mom, and just she's an amazing woman. Like you and I have that in common for sure. So
So past board chairman Brian Head's on here. He is also a Colorado native. I told you I would link this up. So there will be conversations for sure. So you grew up, and then after you figured out what you wanted to do, which kudos to you, because I still feel like I wake up and I'm like, personally, what do I want to, personally cover? I love what I do in chamber world, but personally, I'm like, okay, where do I see this? But you knew, and so you hopped into it. Did you immediately go into Megastar, where you're currently at, or did you start in another capacity and kind of grow through their programs?
Yeah, so that's a great question. So I started in the wholesale side. So I was doing like the back end and kind of like the middleman. And I was in the business in 2008 when the crash happened and they shut down our entire branch. And I was actually a little bit blessed because I took it as a blessing in disguise. I stayed home with my kids for a couple of years and I loved every minute of it. And then when they were old enough to go to school on their own, I was like, now it's time for me to go be an adult again. So I did that. And that's when I started with Megastar. So I've been with Megastar since 2012. So almost 9 years now.
Yeah. Oh my gosh, almost 9 years. And so you're going to have your 10-year anniversary pretty soon here. Not to date, how long you've been in the industry, but that is going to be something that's worth celebrating. For sure. You mentioned to me I heard a couple of kids that you had. So I'm going to have to kind of go a little bit sideways in our conversation and ask you to tell me about your kids.
So I have two kiddos. One is actually almost an adult. She's going to turn 18 in a couple of weeks. She's on her way to UNC. Go Bears. So she's super excited. She's going to be studying theater. And then I have another one that's going to be a sophomore this year, and she goes to Stargate up in Thornton. So big charter school supporter.
Absolutely. And more connection. I know we have a lot of members that are heavily engaged in charter school. In fact, we've had Woodrow plugged in with us, and recently Jefferson Academy has also connected. So there will be some synergy on that. And now that I know it, I will definitely be peppering you with some questions as I see different things pop up that I think might interest you. But that's amazing that you've been able to kind of raise these two pretty successful girls and see kind of where they're going. Dave, I didn't want to date you by saying that you were also a gator at the time, because then it would lead into the what year was that? And I'm not sure that's something you want to disclose. So
I'm totally fine with that. I graduated in 99.
All right. So let me know, Dave, were you out there at that? I feel like that you may have been a little bit before. Don't hate me if I'm wrong, but pop in it. We want to know. So amazing two kiddos that you've got. You've raised them. You've gone back. Now you've been 9 years that you've been working in with Megastar. And there are a lot of companies that do mortgage. There's a lot out there. So I have to ask, why are you with this company? Is it more loyalty than it is anything else? Or are you one of those people that you kind of get into something, you're like, I hate change. I'm going to say this. I'm going to put my head down and keep at it.
No, definitely not. I love change. And I'm always questioning the authority, making sure that I'm in the right place. But I love my company. My branch right here in Westminster is run by an amazing woman, and she's really supportive of me and being able to take care of my family. And the CEO and owner of the company that's based out of Denver, she's a Hispanic woman, and it's just amazing to work for women and strong women and just be able to be surrounded by these amazing people that make me a stronger person. So for sure, I love my company.
I'm so glad you touched on that, because so we did a ribbon cutting a while back over at Megastar, and I remember meeting them and kind of just having an opportunity to interact and hear their story. And yeah, they are super supportive. You're absolutely right. And regardless of who it was that, at the time that we were engaged with, they wanted to be present, but they wanted to allow that person to really grow and develop on their own. And I think that speaks to the company whenever they allow you to take this brand and then kind of go out there and run this show as not only their face, but your own business in the process, really, because you're building your prospects from the ground up.
Right.
Yeah. Right. So you guys may have crossed paths in the hallway.
Probably.
98. So at some point, there will need to be some high school photos that are shown side by side. I feel like you guys had to have crossed paths. You went there apart. That's so funny. I knew it was going to be pretty close. I didn't realize it was going to be that close. That's amazing. So back to our conversation, Megastar, amazing woman-led organization that's been founded from their CEO down to kind of their regional and even the folks here at the branch. They really focus on helping you develop and grow. But more importantly, what's a unique factor to you? So if you were to say, there are 10 other people in a similar role, right? What do you feel brings that differentiating factor for you?
So for me personally, it's probably that I'm a nurturer and I love to help people and guide them through the process. So a lot of people will shy away from first-time home buyers because they're just a lot of work, but that's where I get my energy. I love helping people and guiding them through the process. And so the hard work and just the challenge of being able to structure something that's a little more difficult is where that's where I get my energy. And I love it so much.
So you mentioned you're a nurturer, which as soon as I hear terms like this, I'm like, oh my gosh, is this someone who geeks out like I do on all these personality?
Yes.
Personality assessments. I love them to pieces because they're one of those things that you're like, I'm so unique. And then you get in and you're like, oh, they've got me labeled into this group. So amazing that you also, as soon as I heard that, I was like, you have to be engaged in that. So
yeah, for sure.
Yeah, that is also something you're going to love. That's pretty amazing. So let's talk about where you're located. Right now, I'm assuming you're in an office setting because we've seen some people come and go, either that or you were baking cookies and you're just kind of turning them over.
No, I'm in my office, and our office is at 120th and Pecos, right in that Wells Fargo Bank building across the street from the lovely what used to be Avaya building. That is just it's just so iconic here in the area. So that's where I tell everybody we are. We're across the street from there.
Right. Then, and how hard has it been sometimes? Is it difficult for people to realize that you're in that Wells Fargo building, or are they have they gotten used to knowing that there's other businesses that are in there?
Yeah, that was definitely a challenge, but we've been in this building. The women that run the office, they've been in this building for like something like 20 plus years. And so old customers know exactly where we are, but getting new people to kind of understand that there's more than just Wells Fargo in this building, it's been interesting for sure.
Oh, I bet. COVID, how did that affect you guys? Because you're a little bit more hidden, right? So that could have actually played a great part in this. Because you're a little bit more hidden, you had more of that closure or surrounding the office space. Were you guys operating in your office? Were you more remote, or how does that look during COVID and then post-COVID now?
So we've been really fortunate that we've been kind of sheltered from COVID. It hasn't really hit us as hard. If anything, it's actually helped our business because we can work anywhere, and remote is not an issue. So we were working in and out of the office, wearing masks, not wearing masks, just depending on the circumstances. But because of the government's assistance with being able to help people, they've been able to keep rates really low. So that's been really good for our business. So refinances got really popular. Lots of people were taking advantage of those historic low rates. And so we were really fortunate that we were able to help people. But I do remember when COVID first hit, we weren't sure what was going to happen, and it was hard to do anything. I remember closing people in the trunk of their car. We're just sitting over the top of their car, signing their documents. And so, yeah, that was definitely interesting and a peak of my career. But
yes, I know. You're like, I would have never thought the feeling of it, because you're not in the office setting, you're
right.
conducting it on the hood of a car. You're like, this feels a little bit interesting. This is not the office environment, right?
Yeah, still remember those closings. They hold a special place in my heart.
Oh, I bet they do. I tell you, you've gone through an experience with them, and I'm sure they'll forever remember you, honestly. We talk about mortgage reps, right? And then some people go off on their own. They choose to either buy or kind of sell their home on their own, particularly as they're buying. Sometimes they'll look at their own individual bank and just kind of go with that option for a loan instead of connecting with a mortgage rep. And so I have to ask, is that one of the perks to someone working with a mortgage rep, is that you guys can actually look at more than just one option that's out there for them?
For sure. And the nice thing about what we do is that it doesn't really cost the homeowner anything for them to work with somebody that's a specialist in mortgages. So there's really no difference if they come to something like, as far as rate generally is concerned, or cost or fees. It's no different for them to come to somebody like me who specializes and really helps to guide them through the process versus going to an online lender where they don't necessarily have a direct point of contact. There's no difference in cost for them. And so it's like, why wouldn't you go with somebody that's local, that knows the area, that grew up here, all those things. Like, it's just, in many circumstances, it's really easy for me to sell my services because it's like, there's no cost to you. So it's just a matter of what makes sense for you.
And I would probably say that's another unique factor for you, honestly, Elizabeth, is that you have grown up here. You have seen this community rise through, the last few decades. I mean, not only are you a native from Colorado and generally, but directly in this region. And so you are coming in with an entirely local perspective, which if you're not from here, or even if you are and you're in a different market, you may not know those nuances. And so when we talk about saving time, it really goes into the depth of understanding the market, understanding the lenders and the players that are there. But it's also, I think in a sense, it does also save some time, which does equate to money for those people. Because you guys, I would assume, tell them, here's what is recommended, here's where to sign, here's what will help you fill out, as opposed to them figuring that all out on their own.
Right. For sure. Yeah. Helping them through the whole process and just understanding and like knowing that these areas might be a little bit harder for, a first time home buyer or a single mom or something, like staying away from areas, it's nice to know those things so that I can help guide people through the whole thing,
Yeah, you are feeding my forensic files mind right now. I'm like, oh my gosh, yeah. So which ones.
Right.
Yes, this is where I need to go. And the other comment that you had made, which I wanted to just kind of, I like dissecting a little bit of things because you say some pretty great things, and I want people to hear the very specific things that we're referencing. But you mentioned this personalized attention because and you said it so well. You said when you go with someone local as opposed to elsewhere, even trying to do it on your own, you get that special focus from that person.
Yep. Yep. I guide people all the way from the start to the finish. I go to the closing. I, meet with them in the beginning. I walk them through the whole process. I call them at least once a week. Like it really is specialized personal attention to these folks. And they really find that when they go to I find most of the time when I go to the closing that we're like really close friends. And it's, I can really easily engage with them on Facebook because it's like, I got to know you so well during the process because we really became friends through the process.
And so this leads me to this next question. You didn't know I had this on my radar, which is so perfect that you teed it up. But do you find that some people feel like there might be a bias in some way, or because you've been able to work with so many realtors with different types of organizations that allow for lending? Do you think that some people might feel like you are married to a specific organization or a specific person? Or is that not necessarily a sentiment that's out there?
You mean like people like as in other lenders, or you mean like buyers? Okay, yes.
Yeah.
So I think I don't know that I know the answer to that question. I think it's so personally specific. I think some people are really like, oh, it's just me and I'm selling myself and I can go anywhere. And then other people are like myself, I really love the organization I work for. So we're kind of a package deal because it's easy for me to sell myself as well as the company. Okay. So does that kind of answer?
Yeah, no, I think, and it was such a broad, weird question, but I did that. And this is kind of my segue into some myths that are out there, right? Yeah. And so another myth that I often will hear too, and I think it's a myth more than it is a reality, but it's that brokers or mortgage originators or anyone in that capacity may recommend kind of the highest commission loan. And I don't know if that's just kind of public perception that that's the case because they're getting something off of it or what. But is there anything that you want to say to kind of help with debunking this myth that might be shared by some people?
I think that's a really fair myth. I mean, there's a reason we got into the trouble we did in 2008. And watching all that and watching us lend money to people that weren't in the best situation, I'm very, very conscientious about making sure that when I help somebody that I'm truly helping them and that I talk to people. Like there's often times when somebody will approach me and they'll say, I'm thinking about doing a refinance, and I talk them out of it. Because it's important to me that this is a good financial decision for them. And if it's not a good financial decision for them, I'm going to send them on their way and say, let's talk, in 5 years or whatever, when you want to sell the house, let's talk then. But right now it just doesn't make financial sense for you. So yeah, I think it's fair. There are definitely people out there that don't have the client's best interest at heart. But I definitely try and avoid that at all costs.
Absolutely. Yeah, no. And I'm so glad that this is exactly why we have you on here. And for those of you that are hopping on here, I have Elizabeth with us. She is a Megastar mortgage representative that's there, has been with the company for over 9 years. I hate using the word representative, but I feel like that may capture a little of what she does, because she does a whole lot. And outside of that, she's also a mom to two amazing kiddos that have gone through, one has gone through all the way, the other is still going through high school right now. And so we've got some great information that she's been able to share with us, from the fact that she's a Colorado native to growing up here in our region, all the way to kind of seeing what it was like to be in business from a younger age, through kind of her family, through her mom in that capacity, and then figuring out her own way and finding out this is what I want to be doing. So really great information. If you're hopping on here with us, or if you're still engaged and you haven't already, let us give us some love, give us a congratulatory note for her coming on board with us in our network. I've got another comment that's more like a myth buster comment that I would love to hear kind of your perspective on, just because we have a few more minutes, if that's okay. But this is around kind of the underwriting process. So, and the idea is that we hear that some mortgage brokers say they have no control over what happens during the underwriting process. Is that an actual fact, or is that more of a myth?
It's a fact for some companies. It's not a fact for Megastar. We have the ability to talk to our underwriters directly. We have the ability to send a file in before it even goes under contract to make sure that if there's T's that need to be crossed or I's that need to be dotted, that we can make 100% sure that the client is approved before getting them under contract. So yes, it is that. I mean, that's the reality of the situation sometimes, but we're fortunate that I don't have that challenge.
Yes.
Personally.
Another differentiating fact. I'm
Yes.
just like loading you up with these.
I know, I love it.
Right now, this is so great. And then we talked about the bank, right? Like going on your own to maybe a connection that you already have. This may also answer this question of a myth that if I go with a broker, if I go with a mortgage representative, if I go anyone in your field or in your industry, that it would take longer than if I go through a bank. Are you finding that you guys are on the same timeline? Are you generally quicker than banks? What does that look like for those buyers or interested clients?
That's another great question. I think in general, most people are pretty much consistently about the same time frame. It shouldn't take any longer or less time for any one individual. I know during COVID, there was like a huge influx of refinances. And so there was some companies that were struggling with keeping up with the demand. But at this point right now, it's pretty even keel, no matter who you go to, as far as that's concerned.
Yeah. And is it origination fees that might be present? Is that kind of offset when someone goes with a mortgage broker?
So yeah, that. It just depends on the company, but fees, they range, and that is one of the things that people should definitely be looking at. But like our fees, Megastar's fees are only $875. That's all that you pay to do a loan with Megastar. Everything else is just something that you pay to do the loan. So you're paying title, you're paying the appraiser, you're paying those kinds of fees. But as far as paying Megastar directly, it's only $875. That's it.
Okay. Yeah. And that's a really great tip for folks that are kind of tuned in, is pay attention to those numbers, because they do change for some organizations or for some companies that you work with. And so just be mindful and as much of a smart consumer as you can be, honestly, do your homework. But is there anything, I know I asked a little bit more questions than what I initially had planned. I love talking with you, Elizabeth, and I want people to know just you, right? And just understand more about your role, and anyone that was even considering mortgage or just have inquiries or gets those questions from their friends or family, that they can be equipped with, here are some answers that I've heard off this broadcast, or some things for me to know personally. So were there additional comments or thoughts that you wanted to throw out there for folks that I did not get a chance to ask you?
I don't think so. I think you did a really great job asking all those questions I wasn't expecting.
Right. Well, here's one that I know you have a presence on, but you have a business page that folks can go to, whether it's social or even website. Is there one that you want me to go ahead and type into the comment section?
Probably my Instagram, which is Elizabeth_Lens_Colorado.
Elizabeth_Lens_Colorado. Awesome. And so I've included Elizabeth's Instagram for you inside of the comment section of this broadcast so that you can follow up with her directly. I do encourage any questions related to mortgages, any questions related to any of the items that we touched on today about, does it make sense for you to go with someone? Do you have hesitancy? Have you heard something? That you ask Elizabeth, because she is my subject matter expert. She's been doing this for nearly a decade now, which is so exciting. And I know that her heart's in the right place, and she's willing to at least get you the answers. Not necessarily, hey, you have to come on board with me. She's not definitely like that. She wants you to be taken care of. So her Instagram page is included in the comment section. If you guys end up watching this and we're no longer live, give us the hashtag replay so I know that you tuned in. If you think of a comment or question you did not get a chance to ask Elizabeth because we're not live, you can always comment it our way. You can question the video itself in the comment section, or DM the page, and we'll be able to turn it around to Elizabeth and get you that answer. Mayor Pro Tem DeMott has shared, thank you for the very good chat. I anticipate that you guys will have some synergy moving forward. So definitely
I'm looking forward to meeting you.
Right. This is going to be fun. I already know like at least two of these folks that are on here. We'll have to get you connected with some of our upcoming events and activities. But for those of you that are tuned in or will be tuning in later on, this is again our Wednesday broadcast. We host these on Mondays, Wednesdays, and Fridays. So we will be back here on Friday at 11 a.m. Friday's broadcast is actually we're starting to loop back in our school foundations for the 3 different school districts. You've heard from them before, almost a year ago, actually over a year ago, about how they were weathering COVID, what they were doing to address the needs of the students, address the needs of the families. So now that we are emerging slowly from under the black cloud, they want to share, here's the updates, here's the resources that we're providing, and be able to answer questions for you. So we'll have Adams 12 5-Star Education Foundation with us on Friday at 11 a.m. Thank you so much for tuning in. And Elizabeth, I hope you have a beautiful morning and enjoy the rest of your day.
Yeah, thank you, Julia. This was lovely.